Back to Wittenberg Academy's Latin 3 course. We are ready for lesson 66, which is on page 123 of first year Latin. Verbs in IO of the third conjugation. Some verbs of the third conjugation in IO have all forms of the present system in which I is followed by a vowel, exactly like verbs of the fourth declension. It will be noticed that the usual IE of these tenses weakens to just an E before re and to I before M, S, and T, except in the future. Except in the forms indicated, these verbs are inflected like rego. It is important to watch the infinitive of verbs ending in IO in order to determine whether they belong to the third or fourth conjugation. Well, that's a lot of explanation, and if you fancy, you can certainly try to memorize all those rules. I think it's probably easier simply to add these forms of the third conjugation in IO and simply practice them. And so on top of page 124, the paradigm. So note how their principal parts look. Capio, capere, capi, captus. So you can tell from the infinitive, capere, this is not a fourth conjugation. It's not like audio, audire. It's capio, capere. Okay. So the present indicative active, capio, capis, capit, capimus, capitis, capiant, and the passive capior, capiris, capitur, capimur, capimini, capiuntur. So again, they're not hard to recognize there in the present. The imperfect, again, since it's the imperfect forms itself in such a recognizable way, that's not going to cause you a problem. The future, like all third conjugations, the future is tricky. Capium, capiates, capiet, capiemus, capietis, capiant. Now, I just recommend simply memorizing those futures of spending extra time memorizing those futures in the third conjugation. Likewise with the passives, capiar, capieris, capietur, capiemur, capiemini, capientur. The perfect stem is cape, and so you know all the rest, e is the it, imis is erant. The pluperfect, again, cape, eram, eras, erat, etc., future, and so forth. So the real trick, as always, is in the future, and with these I stems of the third conjugation, a little bit in the present as well. So other verbs of this class on the bottom of the page: cupio, cupera, cupivi, cupitis, to desire or wish. Facio, facere, faci, factus, make or do. That's a very common verb, not only in itself, but also in tons of compounds. And so you'll use that all the time. Fodio, fodera, fodi, phosis, to dig or pierce. Fugio, fugera, fugi, run away or escape. Notice no fourth principal part. Yakio, yakara, yaki, yaktus, to hurl or throw. It's another one that occurs in a lot of compounds. Pario, parera, peperi, partus, to bring forth, produce, or to lay eggs. Rapio, rapera, rapoi, raptus, to tear, rend, seize, or carry off. And more vocabulary: ceteris, an adjective, means the rest, the remaining. Fenestra is window. Fere is almost or about. Lapis is a stone. Mox means soon. Nix, nivis, is snow. Pomarium is an orchard. Pauci means few or a few. And putius is a well. All right, time for the sentences. Go ahead and pause the tape, work on those yourself, study the vocabulary, and then come back for the corrections. Romani agros latos in Gallia ex hostibus mox capiant. Our verb is capiant, so that I-ent ending tells you it is future. Right, future. That characteristic E in the ending in this third conjugation tells you it's future. The Romans, mox capiant, will scarcely capture agros latos, the wide fields, in Gaul, from the enemies. Sentence 2. Ubi novum putium podiemus. Again, that iemus ending tells you you're in this I stem of the third conjugation future. Where shall we dig novum putium, a new well? 3. Quid summa voluntate cupiebas. That's a bos ending, easy, tells you you are in the imperfect. So quid cupiebas, what were you desiring, summa voluntate, with the highest will? In English we'd probably say, what did you want with all your heart? Pauci milites ex caede fugerunt summa celeritate. The verb is fugerunt. Note the stem, fug, if you look up the principal parts of fugio, fugio, fugera, fugi. So its third principal part, this is perfect. So few soldiers have fled, a few soldiers have fled from the melee, from the massacre, with utmost speed, summa celeritate. Sentence 5. Pueri lapides multos in portam horrei jaciebant. Again, that iebant ending, methesi, tells you very clearly you're in the imperfect. So boys were throwing, what were they throwing? Lapides multos, many stones in portam horrei, on the door of the barn. 6. Anomalia. Well, here's an anomalia coming up to do our Latin test, right? On target. Felis est. Sit. Seda. Anomalia. Anomalium. Anomalia omne fere cibos rapiebant. The verb is rapiebant. That abant ending again, very clearly, you are in the imperfect. The animals. And now we have to kind of decide, where does this omnia go? Where does this rapiebant, where does the fere go? So is it the animals, is it nearly all the animals? Anomalia omnia fere? Does that work? Or is it, so nearly all the animals snatch their food, seize their food? Or is it animals carried off nearly all the food? And so for that, you need to look at the parts of omnia, omnia, omnes, and so forth. And what you really need to know is the gender of kibos. And so if you look in the back, because you need to know does that omnia, which way does that omnia go? Can omnia go with kibus? No, kibus is masculine. Cat. Kibus is masculine. So that omnia can't go with kibos. And so, because it would be omnes. And so it's got to be almost all animals snatch their food, that is, hunt for their food. Alright, that will do it for lesson 66. In lesson 67 we slow down with the verb forms and just move on to some pronouns. So that's a little break from learning more and more verb forms. So practice this vocabulary and then you'll be ready for lesson 67.